I think the cold calling is so underutilized, because I think, my experience in, you know in doing some of the cold calling or cold outreach is that, when I finally make contact with some of these people, they have this predetermined understanding of who and what we do.
Hmm.
And, like, I have a conversation going with an architect right now that I was doing cold outreach for, through email, and finally caught him at an event. And I was like, hey, like, I want to work together. He goes, dude, you're way too expensive. I was like, what? Like, we haven't worked together. I've never
Yeah.
priced a job for you. Like, he's like, yeah, but the word on the street, like, I see the stuff you do on social media. Like, I know that that's going to be above and beyond any of our clients.
Hmm.
And there's like part of me that, like, that's cool. Like, I really want to work with this guy, but he's saying I'm like too expensive. But the other part of me is like, yeah, but give me a shot, because,
Right.
sure, the stuff I'm promoting on social media and the stuff that I want to be doing is, $1,000 a foot. But if your budget's 700, okay, well, let's figure that out.
Yeah.
You're like, it doesn't mean I can't do it.
Right.
It might mean that we have to adjust our process in efforts to, like, because ultimately, like, I look at it as, if someone needs us to be more competitive, let us try to get more competitive for the mutual benefit of working together.
Yeah.
I don't want to become competitive with ourselves or our pricing if it's just one-sided reward. But if it's a mutual, if it's mutually rewarding, then shit, like, that's the investment we put into this. This is why we do what we do. This is why we take risks. This is why we invest. This is how construction companies invest.
Sure. Yeah.
And, but my point is like, I think that predetermined understanding of, what a particular company is, like, that's something that you battle and you face, where it's like, in the beginning, everyone's throwing stuff at you, and you kind of go in this circular momentum up, and then all of a sudden you're like past the people that you wanted to work with, because you've kind of outgrown them without ever even working with them.
Yeah. Sure.
And it's like, yeah, but I can come back down. Just give me the
Yeah.
opportunity. Yeah.
I mean, that's a conversation that we've been having with our subcontractors as well. It's like, the mutual relationship that we're trying to develop, and being like realistic about price. So if you guys want to be our painters or you guys want to be our framers, then give us a reasonable price. We'll pass it on, and full transparency with the customer, but everybody stays busy, and then you guys get first look at any of our projects. No hard feelings. It's all business. If you get money somewhere else, then go get money. But we're trying to, actively develop that kind of relationship, and not price ourselves out of projects.
The one thing I'll push back on there is, like, that's all fine. Like, everyone should put a little skin in to build these relationships, but especially when it comes to trades, and I feel the same way, like, about an architect or a client working with us. But when I think of subcontractors and trade partners, yeah, I do want a competitive price. I do want your best price, but I don't want you to do it with the notion that I'm just going to be like every other jerk.
Right.
Like, give me a good price, but tell me how I can be a good general contractor for you. Yeah. I've used the example of painters. It's like, the pricing of any subcontractor now is the basis of their expectation when they show up on a job. And if a painter always shows up and there's always a wood floor guy in his way, he's pricing every job with the expectation that the wood floor guy is going to be there. So he gives you a price for, 120 grand to paint the whole house, and I've went back and said, hey, is there anything I can do to shrink this cost? And he's like, sure. If you can guarantee that I have the house by myself and there's no trades in it, I can do it for 100. Yeah. And in that example, I said, fine, I'll sign the agreement saying I'll pay you 100. And if I don't give you the house to yourself, you can change order me for the 20 grand. And so that puts the risk on me, but now I'm being a good steward to my client, where it's like I'm getting competitive pricing, but it's not because I want him, like, or he wants to work with me, or he wants first look at my projects. It's because we've now had this discussion on how do we both become efficient with one another. How do I become a good GC? How do you perform at your best?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and going forward, that should, I think, be on the top of our minds when we talk with our subcontractors. It's like, how do we not only keep it affordable for the customer, but how do we make your job easy? What do you need from us to really cut that expense down, cut your headache down?
It's
right.
It still brings me back to hopefully it will be a successful process when we're designing and building a new home, and we can bring these people in as consultants, plumbers, electricians, etc., in the design process, so that when we get on site, their bid is their bid, and they understand the scope of work because we use them to create the scope of work. So it should be really helpful in estimating and budgeting, and in turn giving a fair price to the client. If we can, kind of model ourselves in that way to have even a painter signed on ahead of time, before the project is even started. So it could be a really interesting way to, take what you were saying, but almost take it to the next level where, your bid is part of the design. We understand how you work.